You my bitch.
It's Broadway Comedy Club Radio, the only podcast that's also a comedy club, with your clearly above average hosts, Al Martin and Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to Broadway Comedy Club Radio. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, here in New York City, where comedy clubs are open and running, including Broadway Comedy Club itself. And we have with us, as always, my esteemed guest, my co-host, I should say, my comrade for many, many years, my dear friend, the owner of Broadway Comedy Club and comedy impresario, nationwide, worldwide success, Mr. Al Martin. How are you, Al?
Oh, thank you, Clayton. Wow, what an intro that is. We should just record that and keep it forever there. That was great.
I decided to step it up a little bit this week on the intro, so I hope you enjoyed that.
That was great.
Yeah. Well, it's true. And Al, you know, your book is doing well, did it on a dare. A lot of our listeners have been telling us that they have gotten the book. You can get it on Amazon. Just look for Al Martin on Amazon. You won't miss it. And Al, I think that the guest that you invited to join us today, I'm going to allow you to introduce her. I think she has a book as well.
Yes, so our guest today is someone that I think I've met a couple of years ago in comedy, but I found out that she's been doing comedy a while, mostly in Hawaii. But she's a fellow Brooklynite. We know a lot of the same people from back in the old days, and well, for her, not so old days. For me, very old days. But I'd love to welcome Victoria Arnstein to the show.
Thank you.
Victoria, how's it going?
How are you?
Pretty good. I got my book right here. Al Martin was nice enough to give me a forward in. So I'm really excited about talking about that, about comedy, I met Al years ago. I think it was 2012. Where he was sitting in the back of the Broadway Comedy Club, and I was doing a bit. And they said the owner of the club is going to see everybody afterwards and give them their analysis. And Al's pretty consistent. He gives those analyses. The analysis he gave me years later without knowing he gave it to me.
Oh, right.
Don't step on your next joke or the claps.
Okay, I'm out of here. Thank you.
So you didn't improve after Al told you the first time?
No,
well, she took off a while.
It was one or two jokes. That I did that. Well, now I'm very relaxed on stage. It's like breathing to me to be on stage. So I have a theater background. I was in musicals before that, and a lot of community shows, and I was a lead role. So I'm the stage doesn't scare me at all. It's my age. I'm 51. I forget things. That's my biggest problem on stage. What's my next joke?
Wow, it's hard to believe you're 51. Those who are looking on, those who are watching this on YouTube are going to be actually shocked to hear you say that you're 51. You look much younger.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Al says you took a little break in the middle of your comedy career, and what was that all about?
It was after that show or a show later, I ended up moving to Hawaii, taking my whole family, not caring about comedy at all. I was only in comedy, give or take 6 months. And then I went to Hawaii, and I was like, I don't want to touch the local humor here. I'm a Jewish girl from Brooklyn. I don't think they're going to get me. I was happy not doing comedy. I was fine, just exploring the island and loving. I'm a swimmer, a long distance swimmer, and I'm also a runner. And I mean, I've done ultra marathons, which were, above a marathon, anything above a marathon. My husband's also a runner. So I did a lot of other exploring in Hawaii. I didn't think I even needed comedy. I was so happy to be in Hawaii after being in New York for so long.
Now, Vicky, tell us who was your neighbor in Hawaii?
Obama.
Literally, her next door neighbor was Barack Obama.
Yeah, we shared the backyard. This was our backyard, just so you know.
On YouTube, we're seeing a picture of a gorgeous beach here for those who are listening on the podcast. You're missing this gorgeous
Just
picture.
look up Lanikai Beach. Lanikai
Yeah.
Beach in Kailua is the most photographed beach in the world.
Now,
And
how was Obama as a neighbor? Did he forget to take out his garbage or pick up the paper or
you
anything?
think he takes out his own garbage? He, no, I've met him at a restaurant before, a local restaurant that's nearby, and I know the people that grew up with him and called him Barry. So, you know, I knew him on that level. I didn't vote for the man. I don't think he was particularly a great president, but he was my neighbor. Michelle was my neighbor. You know, they saw me outside. I used to paint on rocks and sell them to stores and sell them to neighbors. And she actually liked them, but then there was a car behind her and she had to leave. So, but she was probably going to buy a rock from me, and maybe she did at the store. I don't know. But yeah,
So,
they were my neighbors.
So I find that interesting that Obama was actually your neighbor, and that you're now, having spoken many times with you and observed you on social media, your politics could not be further from
Yeah.
Obama's politics, which brings me to my question. You know, in an industry that is primarily known as being very liberal, how do you feel your political, and you're not bashful about it either. You right up there will say how you feel. Do you feel that's hurt you at all in your stand-up world, or?
Yes, 100%. First of all, I want to just say that I'm not a conservative. I lean right, but I've always been a liberal socially. Fiscally, no, but socially, I've always been a liberal. So, I mean, I couldn't not be if I was into the arts. You know what I mean? That was like, yeah, I'm very accepting of everyone. Live and let live. I don't care if you get an abortion. I don't care. Well, in the 9th month, I care. But I don't care. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what sex, you're interested in. That never bothered me. I don't care at all. But what I care about is when things get off the kilter, and both sides, on both sides. I don't like too far right, and I don't like too far left. But I'm really right in the middle. But I lean a little towards the right because I feel like it has more order and there's less of a boundary problem. You know what I mean? But in Hawaii, I have to say, I did get banned from shows because there was a Hawaii comedian page, and I wrote, I like what Trump is doing for Israel, and people just started bashing me left and right. And then the producer wrote me privately. I still have the email. She says, "You're an embarrassment. I'm not booking you anymore," and blocked me. She didn't even give me a chance to explain.
Well, you know what I find fascinating sometimes? The same people that are very vocal, and this is of all races, very vocal about other people's rights, and other people's not getting trampled on. They sometimes seem to have no problem with, bashing Israel or Jews. And then they make this cute little differentiation. Well, we love Jews and we have Jewish friends, but we don't like the apartheid in Israel. Meanwhile, if you ask a lot of Arab people in Israel who they would rather have running their social services, Israelis or the Palestinian Authority, they'll tell you the Israelis any day of the week, because at least they're citizens of Israel. They will get the services, as opposed to God knows what happens in the Palestinian Authority areas.
And I have to add to that, my mother lives in Israel, so I know firsthand that Israel has such a good system going on, that they have done such wonderful things to this country. It was barren land, and then they irrigated it, and they made it so beautiful. And most of technology comes from, the science and technology is coming right out of Israel. It's a wonderful country.
Now, you're a hard worker. I could tell that from virtually the beginning when I met you. When you commit to something, you really try to maximize it. And I remember the first show you produced for me, it was like a sold out crowd, back in the day. Like I think you packed the upstairs room, which seats 70 people. You packed it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. So
yeah, and it was not one bringer. It wasn't a bringer. I brought them all myself. I went to the Hilton Hotel and started asking people if they wanted to. I'm a hustler. Even
I
in Hawaii.
love it.
Thank you. In Hawaii, look, I didn't work for 20 years or something because I was raising my kids. And I took that work ethic, and it really is a mother does a really hard job in multiple things. So I took that work ethic, and I'm a hustler. I've always been a hustler. Even when I worked in a jewelry store on Madison Avenue, I've grabbed people like Sly Stallone off the street and brought them in, and I've made customers that way. But I'm never shy about that because I feel like a lost opportunity is a lost opportunity. And when I was able to hustle, I was able to get people, even in Hawaii, I was a paid comedian. They paid me. I didn't have to bring anybody if I didn't want to, but I want to fill seats. I want to pull my weight. So I bring people off the street, or I would make friends with people and they would come to my show in droves, and they appreciated it. It's a win-win for everyone. And okay, I didn't get anything for it, but I got the feeling that everybody was happy. You know what I mean? And seats were getting filled, and that's all that mattered to me.
Let me help our listeners out real quick. Vicky used a term called bringer. So those of you who are not in the New York City comedy scene, what that means is sometimes comedy shows, some of the comedians will be amateur comedians, newer comics that don't really have the chops yet to just get a regular spot on the show. So sometimes comedy clubs will have what we call bringer spots, which is the rules are you can perform in the show, but you have to help us fill the audience, whether it's 5 people, 7 people, whatever the case may be. And so when she says she didn't have any bringers on that sold out show, what she means is that she provided the audience herself rather than relying on people to invite their friends to it. So yeah, that does show a lot of hustle, especially to be able to sell out a 70-seat show just with people that you knew. That shows that you're really good at networking and making friends, and that people want to support your comedy career. So you know, that's a great thing to
Thank you.
to have.
Now-
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Clayton and Vicky, did you see this post yesterday? It was on one of the comedy group pages where a guy was asking people to help him build a brick and mortar comedy club.
Yes.
Was that satire of some sort?
No, I think he was serious.
Okay, so Al, for those who didn't see it, I didn't see it. Tell me and the listeners what you're talking about.
Yeah, so basically what it was this guy was asking people to help him build a brick and mortar comedy club where he was going to, he wanted, it built to New York City Department of Building Codes, and that he would reward people with a spot on a show, which, I mean, this had to be satire, because he'll reward them with a spot on a show, but it's not a real show, it's an audition show, but he can't guarantee that the audition will get you anywhere to do spots at his show. So he wanted free labor.
You mean physically help him build it? Like, he's not asking for money. He wants people to actually show up, like with bricks.
Yes.
Okay.
Now I've gotten bashed on the same show.
He's offering, the old classic line, we don't have a lot of money in the budget.
Oh, yeah.
I get that a lot when people want to rent my venue for
Low
films.
budget. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll come in, we'll tear apart your whole place to film a movie, which hopefully will sell for money. But we don't have that much money to give you to pay someone to babysit us there.
Great exposure, though, right, Al? Great exposure.
Great exposure, So this guy is going to have people come with hammers, plumbers, and electricians. They'll do all this work for him. But the best he can offer them is some stage time. And that's not even a real show. That's an audition to perform over there. Yeah. So it's like, it had to be satire.
I don't know. I've gotten bashed for writing, that I need people to bring people and help fill seats. And, you got all the bashers of the bringer shows. And yet at the end of the day, I mean, if you could sell seats without just putting your name on the flyer, go for it. I applaud you. I really do. But you're not doing that. In fact, even a high level comedian is not bringing people by their name only. They're just
Al, I think that I know quite a few construction workers, believe it or not, and some of them are pretty funny. So this guy might be able to make this happen. A bunch
Well,
of
listen,
comedians building a
listen,
comedy club. I like this
I
idea.
will tell you, in the very early days, about 30 years ago, of the New York Comedy Club, we did have certain people. A very good comedian right now who's all over closing rooms. When I say closing rooms, meaning he's the last comic on the show, not putting rooms out of business. But his name is Rob Falcone. He did a lot of carpentry work for me in the early days at New York Comic Club, and I had a whole list of guys that were had different skill set that I would barter stage time for. But I mean, this guy was like wanted the whole place built. I mean, I would use those people to supplement other people, but this was wild, you know.
You
And
know,
I don't know.
I would really like to have a house in the Hamptons. So if a bunch of aspiring comedians who have construction skills want to build me a house in the Hamptons, I can't promise you anything, but I'll at least give you an audition.
Well,
Yeah, exactly right.
Jesus was a carpenter and also a prophet, which makes me realize, why didn't he build his own churches if he knew what was going to happen?
Right. Well, I'll tell you, it's a classic story, where I'll see people bash bringer shows, and they bash them and they tear them apart. They call me up to produce a show for me, and I'll ask them, well, how do you propose you'll be bringing your audience in? Oh, we're going to do Facebook ads. We're going to do Facebook ads are the flyers of 30 years ago. Everybody's going to do Facebook ads. The whole world's rushing because you put out a Facebook ad. And at the end of the day, I tell them, look, sir, buddy, at your level, in the beginning of where you're at, your best shot is maybe to put a couple of other people on. You all invite some people down. I don't care how you financially pay them, but part of the covers, whatever you want to do, that's your business. And always they say, well, I don't want this to be a bringer, and sometimes, just to prove a point, I will let them do the show on a weird time spot, like a Tuesday at 7:00 or Monday, and invariably nobody shows up. And then I tell them, well, do you see what I mean? Oh, if you gave me a Saturday night, yeah, I'm going to give you a Saturday night at 8:00 in my room for the same nobody to show up,
Now,
Listen,
Victoria.
But anyway,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Clayton.
I was just going to ask Victoria. I didn't mean to change the subject, but I'm really curious about, you had this wonderful life going on in Hawaii, and you're living on the beach next door to Barry Obama and everything else. Did you happen to get right back to New York just in time for the pandemic?
No, it was actually a year and a half before that. And it's funny because my husband and I, and it's in the book, we were actually going through a very hard time in our marriage. We have 3 kids and we were separating. So I was hungry when I got here. Al saw the fire in me, and he knew that I had kind of what it took. And I kind of proved it, I hope. And yeah, no, I mean, I also didn't want to do a bringer show. I was like, I'm above the bringer thing right now. I think I'm going to just go with the pros. I want a good quality show. I don't want to take a chance on bringers. So I ended up listening to Al in the end. He's got the experience. He knows the know-how. And he was right. He was right. Evan Weiss was right. The only thing I do differently from Evan, and he's a real hustler, I put on well-known comedians, which I like to do because I think that it pulls more people to want to come see the show, and it will definitely hold the show. It'll hold its weight. If some people are not that good for 5 minutes, at least we have somebody really great that's a guaranteed laugh.
Well,
So
there's one thing
I
I tell everybody, and this is, I will put Al Martin up against anyone in terms of comedy advice. Al has been a mentor to me and to so many hundreds, probably thousands of comedians over the years. And if Al gives you advice, he's seen it all, he's done it all, he's survived in a city where comedy clubs have opened and closed and opened and closed all around him. And all Al has done is have success in one of the toughest, most cutthroat businesses in the world. And that's why I think people should read his book.
Yeah.
and heed his advice, because it's not like he's the new kid on the block. Al, you've been doing this for how long now? Since the 80s, right?
Yeah, 89, 30, now 32 years.
Yeah,
So,
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for Al. Are you kidding me? Anybody who doesn't take advice from somebody that's already done everything is just foolish. And I know that because I wrote a book about basically learning from other people's mistakes is a really good thing. You know what I mean? And I mean, you're already taking shortcuts with that. But also Al provides you know, first of all, he's very, very generous when it comes to making a show. You know, he doesn't take anything from you. He just gives you that reign, and you know, he just wants you to fill seats. I think that's a really good relationship. You know, it's symbiotic. Everybody wins in the end, and
Yeah,
that's
well,
very helpful. And that's what a lot of other clubs don't see. Look, some clubs like the Cellar are established. Gotham is established already, but I have to say, with all the stuff that they have to do to keep that going, Al has people doing it where they have incentives to want to, you know, work with him. And I am very grateful for your friendship, Al. And I also believe that the symbiotic part, it just keeps you going. You know what I mean? We always come back because we want it to keep going, because it works. It just works. I mean,
yeah.
why reinvent the wheel?
I've had people that are with me for many, many years. And, you know, this pandemic, you know, Clayton knows we've had private conversations, but, you know, this pandemic has really offered all sorts of crazy challenges with reduced capacities, curfews, and all sorts of stuff that have made it very difficult. And, you know, some people in my universe, I've gotten a lot of new producers heading my way because they were unhappy. It's funny, people are unhappy at other venues because of the change in all their policies due to the pandemic. And now they're coming to me. And then there have been a couple of people that are unhappy with me now because of new policies or policies that they're leaving. It's like a circle of people running around.
No, that's the thing, Al. You can't please everybody. But if you were having a low self-esteem day, Al, and then you got the intro that I gave you, and then those amazing comments that Vicky just gave you, you must be riding high right now.
I'm riding high, and I'm riding so high, I'm going to have to ride off the podcast in a moment because I do have a doctor's appointment. I'm trying to wrap up loose ends down here. I'm coming back north in a week, so I got to run.
But don't worry, we'll get to your book, but right after we say
No. I wanted to say that my husband never met Al, but through me, he really is a big fan of yours, Al. He's like, stick with this guy. My husband's a businessman, no nonsense. We love straight talkers. And my husband is like, I can't wait to meet Al. That's what my husband.
We're gonna get together up in New York in the next few weeks for sure. And Clayton, I'm gonna see you, of course, up there at our Monty's dinners and stuff, and I'm looking forward to all of that. And you know, talk a little bit about your book with Clayton, and I got to run.
Okay, Al.
Thank you, Al. Thank you for everything.
You know, it's so amazing that we have the opportunity to speak with Al Martin and co-host a podcast with him every week. He's obviously a very busy guy. He runs 2 comedy clubs. He has other business interests, and you know, it's just amazing that we're able to have like an ongoing weekly conversation with him. But you know, he kind of gave us a heads up, Vicky, before we started recording today, that he was on a super tight schedule. But we do have a few minutes, and I definitely wanted to hear more about your book. It's called Impress Yourself, and I want to hear what the inspiration was for why you wrote it, and just tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. My inspiration was, well, I was listening to Instagram Lives with James Altucher, and he owns Stand Up New York.
Yeah, we've had James on as a guest
recently
on this podcast as well. Yeah, so James is a friend. He's the one, for those who don't remember, he's the one who famously said New York is dead, and that caused a lot of controversy and got a lot of publicity, including Jerry Seinfeld arguing the case from his comfortable home in the Hamptons.
I actually met him. Well, I have had him on my shows. I couldn't believe he was the Bitcoin guy. and I'm into Bitcoin. So I remembered him from that, and I was like, oh, he does comedy? I didn't know that. And I didn't even know he co-owned a club. But I ended up having him on many of my shows. He's a really nice guy. He and his wife, Robin, are lovely people. And he was doing an Instagram live, and he has bestseller books. And he's like, just write a book. Just doesn't matter. Just whatever you know about, write about. So I used to make YouTube videos about health and fitness. That was how I started YouTube. And my viewers actually went from, health and fitness to comedy, which both intertwine, because people don't realize I wrote about 8 pillars of health, meaning sleep, sunlight, fresh air, hydration, movement, whole foods, maintaining great relationships, sunshine, and I think I said sunshine, and laughter is one of them. And people don't realize that they need laughter in order to be healthy.
Tell me about that, Vicki. What are the health benefits of laughter? What medically, like physically happens when you laugh?
Well, it's impossible. First of all, it serves everything from your endorphins to dopamine to, serotonin levels go higher. And people have been known to actually get better medically because of laughter. And laughter, it's impossible to be angry when you're laughing. It's actually impossible. You could try it. Next time you laugh, people don't realize it, but I've already done the studies. I also studied human behavior. So I'm very hyper aware of it. So I wrote about it, but I want you to next time, or anybody who's listening, next time you laugh, make a note of how you're feeling, and you know that you can't be angry. It's a mini vacation from stress. And it's been told many times from other comedians like Joan Rivers that you are taking a mini vacation, regardless if it's a shocker. People get shocked by comedy, but sometimes it's a good distraction. Distraction could be a good thing. Tony Robbins talks about distraction, how he just completely surprises people and gets them off guard, and they're distracted from whatever it was that was mind-boggling to them and stressing them out. We need to release this. I say it with exercise. I was an ultra marathoner. I've won races. I've won without a running background. I've won a 100K race, which is 62 miles. I won first place. How did I do it? I trained. I talk about how the 8 pillars of health were the best way to get to the next level. So when you have all these things going for you, it's kind of like a baby. When a baby is crying, it obviously it has a reason. It doesn't just cry. It has a wet diaper, or it's got to eat, or it's tired, or all three. But we have the same thing as adults. We just don't address them. We ignore them. We cover them up. We say, I'll sleep later. We cover it up with coffee or whatever it is. And I'm not saying coffee's bad, but a lot of people abuse a lot of the things that we need essentially. I mean, it's not essential oils that you need. It's essential sleep. We need to sleep in order to recharge for our brain to function normally. So take a power nap. Don't ignore those signs, because those things lead to bad health.
So
and if you have bad health, you have nothing.
So you're saying babies are onto something here.
Oh,
babies,
yeah.
Babies have the right idea.
Yeah, and I believe we're supposed to learn from babies. Because if we learn and take the cues from a baby, we realize that we're not that different. And we also realize that a baby needs us in order to bond. Like, babies are made cute for a reason, otherwise people would probably ignore them. You know what I mean?
Too much work. They're too much work to not be cute. They have to be cute.
It's rewarding. It's rewarding in the end. Yeah, and then they grow to be teenagers, and that's another whole story.
Another story. Yeah. Well, when you talk about the healing power of laughter, that really speaks to me. I know a little bit about something called laughing yoga, which is a yoga class where they just, even though nothing necessarily funny is happening, they just kind of stand in a circle and start off the class by getting the blood flowing, by kind of forcing laughter. And there's also some science about if you smile when you're in a bad mood, your brain gets confused and makes you feel better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So doesn't know the difference.
There's like a connection there.
Yes, a brain could be tricked. And I seek out laughter. Like, I know a lot of people think that they can go days and days without it. My phone's ringing. But you can't go days without it. You can only go days without it. You can't go hours without it. You know what I mean? I mean, you can go hours without it, but you need it after a while, and people don't realize it.
Well, one thing I saw back in 2002, we all know what happened in September of 2001 here in New York City.
Yeah.
You know, in the months that followed, things were pretty grim around here. And, you know, I was in New York at that time, of course. And in 2002, there was a mini comedy boom. Several clubs opened, clubs that were already existing, but maybe struggling, started thriving. Audiences really came to comedy clubs to kind of, as you said before, escape, and they
Yeah.
needed that little mini vacation, and maybe like listening to crazy comedians talk about Lord knows what for 90 minutes
Yeah.
was a
Or
nice
maybe just
escape.
an excuse to drink. No.
Yeah, well, I mean that is part of it, but you know, there are plenty of people that come to the comedy club and order 2 waters. They have
I
to
know.
order
I'm just
they have
kidding.
to order 2 of something, right? But
Right.
it doesn't have
Right.
to be alcohol. Yeah, certainly for some people, the perfect combination is a little bit of alcohol and a little bit of laughter. That's
I
a
think so.
perfect Friday night.
I
Yeah,
think so.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not telling alcohols to do it. I'm just saying what works for me.
But I'm kind of wondering whether what we'll see now that the pandemic seems to be kind of getting under control and things are returning to some version of normal.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and what we've seen already early on here, now that clubs are finally open in New York, I think demand is going to spike
I think so
for
too.
comedy clubs, for
Yeah.
music venues. Just people have been home for too long and they want to
Yeah.
go out and have a good time. And
Yeah.
you know, our
Yeah.
shows are selling out now. Part of it's because we're at reduced capacity, as
Yeah.
you know,
When people say sold out shows, I'm like, whoa,
yeah, it's
20
much
people.
easier to sell out a 30% audience than it is a 100% audience. But you know, generally speaking, in New York, usually we have more supply than demand.
Yeah.
There's more places to see comedy club. If you really want to find a seat at a comedy club on an average Saturday night, you can find one somewhere. It might not be like the hottest ticket in town, but you'll find a ticket to a comedy show that night. Now it's like you better get your tickets early because all the clubs are selling out. I use quotation marks, selling
Yeah.
out at
No,
30%.
and that's good. And that's good. Actually, I mean, we couldn't have planned it better because now the limited capacity makes you want to be a part of that seat. And also it makes you want to go later on when it does open up. You realize, wow, this could happen anytime. People have uncertainty is a very, very hard thing to deal with. Club owners as well as patrons have like, when is this could this happen again? I want to get all I can out of life before it does happen again, because now we know what we're in for, and anytime they could stop us from doing whatever.
Absolutely.
So
And
that's a
we've got to
good
be ready.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, you know, a gym membership, like anybody that's in the gym, they're all going to the gym now because they're like, I don't know when the next storm is going to be. I need to prepare. We're all like squirrels in a way. We're gathering our nuts, and we know that anything could happen now that we've seen. I mean, it's weird because at 9/11, and by the way, I just gave birth right before that. 9/11 is a good reminder, but 9/11, Broadway theaters were only closed for 3 days, and that was 9/11. Could you imagine how much more damage we have done because we haven't had anything for a year and a half? I mean, that's a lot to take in. That's a lot for anyone to, you know, get depressed. And that's another reason I wrote the book. I wrote the book because A, I had time, and B, I realized depression and suicide is so way up right now that I wanted to give people a chance. I mean, the name of the book is Impress Yourself. That's me as a little girl. My husband thought that was a good idea to put my child self. But impress yourself means you're with yourself 24 hours a day. You are your own best friend. Why not? Why are you so angry with yourself when you're so much nicer to other people? So many people are nice to other people, they forget about themselves. But you have your own built-in best friend. You're never alone. You're never alone because you could find ways to make yourself happy, which is one of them is laughter. You seek it out. Thank God we have YouTube. We have Netflix. We have ways to get it now. Thank God. But there's nothing like live comedy. I will always say that. I will always be right here with live comedy is the top of the top. You never know what's going to happen.
Would you say that your book is a self-help book of sorts? Is it
Yeah,
more a
it's
biography?
motivational. Well, it's all of those things. I put myself out there, which I basically wrote the book originally for my children for when I'm gone, to have some sort of tools and maybe find out a little bit more about me in depth. Like, for instance, I wanted to do comedy, stand-up comedy, when I was single about 25 years ago, but I'm from a small community in Brooklyn, a Jewish community, and I thought if I did comedy, no one would marry me. So I didn't do it. Of course, that was in my head. Maybe it wasn't, maybe it was true. But I could tell you this, a Sephardic Jewish man, I don't think would have been really happy with his wife doing comedy and getting up there on stage talking about, you know, their relationship or whatever it was that we could talk about.
Well, you
So,
certainly have an unusual background
yeah,
for a comedian.
yeah, very few
Definitely
of us. Yeah,
the life
just,
you've led and the places you've lived and the
yes,
neighbors you've had
yes.
and everything. It
I'm
seems
like a
like you
black
have
sheep.
quite a different story to tell.
Well, I've always been, my father was very Americanized for a Syrian Jewish man. And so he took us out of New York City and Brooklyn, explored so many places, took us on many vacations. So I've gotten a taste of that. And I'm also a little bit of a black sheep in my family. Everybody still lives in Brooklyn, but I'm the one who got away. I married an Ashkenazi European Jew. So that was also somebody that took me out of it. So I had both worlds. And I can honestly say, if you stuck in one world, you'll in any way, in anywhere, like if you're stuck in Hollywood or if you're stuck in the Hamptons, if you're stuck in any one world, you will have more ways to drown. You need to have other outlets. And I really believe that if people have other outlets, they'll have more balance. My whole key in my book, the whole thread is about balance. We need balance. That's why I'm not far right. I'm not far left. I'm right in the middle. I don't like scuba diving. I don't like skydiving. I like to swim right here. You know what I mean? I'm all about balance. And I realize that, even with people, no matter how much you love them, you need to take them in doses. Not everybody could be with you 24 hours a day. I really believe that. And I believe that the one thing that I say in my book that a lot of people get out of it, getting 5-star ratings and also reviews. They say the one thing that really stuck with them, besides the 8 pillars of health, were that I said, love yourself, but not delusionally. You could hate some parts of yourself. You don't love anyone fully, ever. So why should you give yourself that pressure of loving yourself in every way? That's bogus. Don't put on those goggles. That's what self-help books do. Love yourself. Love yourself. Well, what if we don't want that pressure of loving ourselves fully? There are things we don't like about others. Why can't we not like certain things about ourselves and work on them? Or just accept them, because you can't change them. So that's what I talk about also in the book. I basically gave you the whole book, but no, the book actually has a lot of golden nuggets. So if you take anything out of it, if you extract anything, you've already won. And a lot of the proceeds go to children's hospitals and to charities, because I really believe that. You make nothing on Amazon. I'm making nothing. It's skimming the top. The only purpose the book is making is getting any money from it is Amazon is making the money, really. And I'm making very little because of pictures. If you put pictures in it, colored pictures, the black and white pictures are less money, but the colored pictures cost more, to print out. But that's it. I'm really just doing it for the labor of love, really.
Well, it sounds like a terrific labor of love and a very productive way to have spent your pandemic working on a book. I think a lot of people maybe dream of writing a book or plan to write a book someday, and then they just never get around to it. So to me, just whenever I see somebody that's actually published something, whether they sold 1 million copies or made $1 million or not, I'm always impressed by that. And so
Thank you.
we appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast with us this week.
you.
Before we go, why don't you tell people how they can find you on social media, etc.?
Okay, so I did want to touch upon one more thing about my comedy. Is a bit of a shocker sometimes. I am more of a speak your kind of truth before you die kind of person. So if I rattle people's bones or if I rattle people in any way, Am I apologetic about it? Yeah, but you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not doing it out of maliciousness. I'm doing it out of get a break from yourself and just laugh. The cancel culture, the cancel mob, all that canceling, it backfires. I say that comedy should be the Wild West and not have any boundaries. I say that people should be able to express themselves. And because you can express yourself, there might be somebody out there that actually appreciates it. And that way we could learn from everybody's point of view without having censorship, which I think is a really bad ship to be on. I think that ship should sink and never, ever rise again. Dictatorship is right there with it, and it's very, very, very linked. Censorship and dictatorship are very dangerous ships to be on. I want people to be more aware of it and how it comes for everyone, especially comedians. And I want people to realize that comedy is something that should just be flowing and freely. It is an instinct that we have. You see it in babies. We laugh instinctively. Don't feel badly about laughing at a too soon joke. You're laughing because it's funny. We all laughed at Archie Bunker because he was funny in All in the Family. The Jeffersons, the same thing. We laugh because we really think it's funny, and it's not something you should feel guilty about, and you shouldn't be made to feel guilty about it. That's where I'm at in comedy. Comedy is just let it go. And then when you leave a comedy club, think about it. Maybe you have something else to think about. Maybe we've altered your mind. As comedians, we're very, very observant. So maybe listen to our take on something. You might get something out of it. And my YouTube videos, before I did this, I was a health coach. I did it for charity. I've gotten people off diabetic medications. I'm really into health. And I'm telling you, laughter is one of my favorite ways to get healthy. I wish you all luck. I hope you read the book and get something out of it. It's called Impress Yourself. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So the book is Impress Yourself. You can find it on Amazon and wherever else books are sold.
I'm sorry. My Instagram is Victoria the Comedian. Victoria the Comedian on Instagram, and you could find me also on Twitter at Vicky Arnstein. But you know, Victoria the Comedian's good enough. And my next show is at Broadway. It's May 12th. I've got Bob DeBono on there. It's going to be a great show. May 12th at 8:00 at Broadway. I hope to see some people there. And thank you again.
So for Victoria Arnstein, for Bob DeBono, for Barack Barry Obama, for Al Martin, and for our incredible producer, Jay Frank, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
I just like to bitch.
Hi, Al Martin here, owner of the Broadway Comedy Club and Greenwich Village Comedy Club in New York City. And I just authored a great book on stand-up comedy and my 30-year journey called Did It on a Dare, How I Built a Comedy Empire in 30 Short Years. So if you want an interesting story on the comedy scene in the 90s and early 2000s up until the present, if you're an aspiring comic and want to learn about some of my golden rules of comedy from a comedy club owner, this is the book for you. It's available on Amazon, and just go to Amazon, click Al Martin, and it'll take you right to my page. It's available on audio and Kindle as well as paperback. Thank you.